As a writer, I've come to realize that the most memorable characters in stories are the ones that feel like real people. And what makes a character feel real? It's their backstory, the experiences and events that have shaped them into who they are today. Whether it's a tragic childhood, a pivotal moment of self-discovery, or a series of struggles and triumphs, a character's backstory can give them depth, complexity, and relatability. Without a backstory, a character can feel flat and one-dimensional, like a cardboard cutout. But with a well-crafted backstory, a character can come to life in the reader's imagination, sparking empathy, intrigue, and emotion. A backstory can also help explain a character's motivations, behavior, and decisions in the present-day story, adding layers of meaning and nuance to the plot. Of course, crafting a compelling backstory isn't always easy. It requires a deep understanding of your character, their past, and their place in the story. But with careful attention to detail and a willingness to explore the complexities of your character's life, you can create a backstory that will leave a lasting impression on your readers. In this video, I'm going to share with you my 5-step process for writing a compelling backstory that will add depth and dimension to your characters. So whether you're writing a novel, a screenplay, or a short story, don't overlook the importance of a character's backstory. Take the time to delve into their past, to unearth the moments that have made them who they are. You might just be surprised at the richness and depth that emerges from the process. So if you're ready to take your storytelling to the next level, then stay tuned. 1. Understand the purpose of the backstory. When writing a story, it's important to create characters that feel real and believable. One way to do this is by developing a backstory for each character. The backstory should serve 3 main purposes: providing context, explaining motivations and decisions, and adding depth and complexity to the story. Think of the backstory as a way to help the reader understand the character's present situation. It should explain how the character got to where they are at the beginning of the story and why they are the way they are. This can help the reader understand the character's behavior and struggles. For example, a character who is struggling with addiction may have a backstory that explains how they first became addicted and the events that led up to their current situation. Providing this context can help the reader understand the character's present behavior and struggles. The backstory should also reveal important events and experiences that have shaped the character's values, beliefs, and goals. This will help the reader understand why the character behaves the way they do and what drives them. It can also make the character more relatable and interesting. For example, a character who is driven to succeed may have a backstory that reveals a difficult childhood and a desire to escape poverty. This can help the reader understand why the character is so focused on achieving success and why they may be willing to make sacrifices to reach their goals. Finally, the backstory should add depth and complexity to the story by revealing important details and insights. This can make the story more engaging and help the reader become more invested in the characters and their experiences. For example, a character who is initially presented as a villain may have a backstory that reveals a tragic event that led them down a dark path. This can add complexity to the character and make them more interesting and engaging for the reader. Remember, the backstory should be integrated into the story in a natural and organic way. It should not feel like a separate entity from the main plot, but rather should flow seamlessly from the present story. 2. Decide what information to include. When deciding what information to include in a character's backstory, it is important to consider the key events, experiences, and relationships that are relevant to the story being told. These elements should be chosen carefully to provide insight into the character's personality, beliefs, and behaviors. Start by considering the character's past and the events that have had the most significant impact on them. These could be positive or negative experiences that have shaped who they are today. Think about how these experiences have influenced the character's values and beliefs, and how they might impact their behavior in the story. It is also important to consider the character's relationships with others. Think about their family, friends, and romantic partners, and how these relationships have affected the character's development. Did they have a supportive family growing up? Did they experience heartbreak or betrayal in a past relationship? These details can help to flesh out the character's backstory and provide insight into their present-day behavior. Once you have identified the key events, experiences, and relationships that are relevant to the story, you can begin to decide which details to include and which to leave out. It is important to strike a balance between providing enough information to make the character believable and relatable, while avoiding overwhelming the reader with unnecessary details. 3. Determine the format. When it comes to presenting the backstory, there are various formats to choose from, including flashbacks, dialogue, or narration. The choice of format depends on the writer's preference and the specific needs of the story. Flashbacks can be an effective way to show the character's past experiences in a vivid and immediate way. They allow the reader to experience the events as if they were happening in real time. However, flashbacks can be disruptive to the flow of the story if not used carefully. Dialogue is another option that can be used to reveal important backstory information. This can be done through characters discussing past events or reminiscing about old times. Dialogue can be a more natural and seamless way of integrating backstory into the story, but it requires skillful writing to avoid coming across as forced or unnatural. Narration is also a common way to present backstory. This involves the author directly telling the reader about the character's past experiences, often in a more objective and detached way. This can be useful for conveying information quickly and efficiently, but may be less engaging than other formats. Here are examples of a backstory presented in each format. 1. Flashback. A character, let's call her Sarah, is in a dangerous situation that triggers a traumatic memory from her past. The scene transitions into a flashback where the audience sees a young Sarah witnessing her parents' murder. This event has shaped Sarah's personality, beliefs, and behaviors, and the flashback provides context for her current situation and motivations. 2. Dialogue. Two characters, John and Amy, are catching up after not seeing each other for years. John asks Amy how she's been, and she starts talking about her recent struggles with depression. John asks her what might have caused her depression, and Amy shares a conversation they had years ago where John unknowingly made a hurtful comment. This exchange provides context for Amy's mental state and helps to explain some of her decisions and behaviors throughout the story. 3. Narration. The narrator describes a character's backstory in a third-person omniscient point of view. For example, the narrator might describe how a character, Mary, grew up in poverty with an abusive father and a mother who worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. Mary was forced to take on a lot of responsibilities at a young age and struggled in school. As an adult, Mary has a deep drive to succeed and provide for herself and her family, but also has difficulty trusting others due to her difficult childhood. The narration provides context and explanations for Mary's personality and motivations. 4. Introduce the backstory gradually. Introducing the backstory gradually is a crucial element in storytelling. Overwhelming the reader with too much information at once can be confusing and detract from the main plot. Instead, it's important to sprinkle in details gradually throughout the story to keep the reader engaged and interested. One effective way to introduce the backstory gradually is through the use of foreshadowing. Foreshadowing involves hinting at events or details that will become important later in the story. For example, a character's fear of water may be mentioned early on in the story, which foreshadows an important event later in the plot where the character must face their fear to save someone. 5. Edit and revise. Editing and revising the backstory is an important step in the writing process. It allows you to refine the details and ensure that the backstory fits seamlessly with the rest of the story. When reviewing the backstory, start by checking its flow and pacing. Is it too long or too short? Does it interrupt the flow of the story or slow down the plot? Ensure that the backstory is integrated into the story in a way that feels natural and doesn't distract the reader from the main plot. Next, evaluate the language and style used in the backstory. Is it engaging and interesting? Does it convey the character's emotions and experiences effectively? Make sure the language is consistent with the tone of the rest of the story and that it matches the character's personality and background. It's also important to check the accuracy of the backstory. Are the events and details consistent with the rest of the story? Are there any plot holes or inconsistencies that need to be addressed? After making any necessary revisions, have someone else read the backstory and provide feedback. Fresh eyes can help catch any errors or issues that you may have missed. Once you are satisfied with the final version, incorporate it into your story and continue to edit and revise as needed. Bonus tip: make sure the backstory is relevant. When crafting the backstory, it is essential to make sure that the details you include are relevant to the character's present situation and the overall plot. Ask yourself whether each piece of information helps the reader understand the character better or move the story forward. Including unnecessary or irrelevant information can distract from the main story and confuse the reader. For example, if a character is a CEO of a company, it would be relevant to provide details about their education, work experience, and business philosophy that led to their success. However, information about their favorite food or color may not be important to the story and may take away from the main focus. So, be mindful of the details you include in the backstory and make sure they serve a purpose in developing the character or advancing the plot. This will help keep the reader engaged and invested in the story.